Okay, here I am setting up to turn down an MTH axle in my milling machine. It's chucked in a 3-jaw chuck in a Sherline vertical milling machine, and I'm getting ready to turn down the axle end like this so that it matches this profile of this setup. One end, I left enough on here for the gear to go back onto the original drive gear, and one end fits an insulated wheel, which is this end, and the other end fits a normal NWSL wheel without the insulation. And when the two axles are done, they'll be mounted back in the power truck and reattached to the motor set in the car. And then I'll be doing testing. It's actually a much simple thing to go ahead and use this punch I got here, this arbor press I got from Harbor Freight, and it's only $38 without tax, and I drilled a hole on each end of the ram for a punch pin to punch the wheels out, to punch the original wheels out without damaging them, so that there is no breaking or tearing or anything like that on the original wheels. So, example here. When you go to punch the wheel out, the first time you go to do it, if you do it with a hammer to punch, you're going to chip the wheel. Even though you'll get the hole intact, you'll still chip the wheel. You don't want to do that. So when you use the arbor press instead, you get no chipping of the wheel at all. And the surface is good. Alright? So, to me, it's just a better, cleaner, faster method than using a hammer to punch. So now all I do is I go ahead and I have this chucked in so it's square. The machine is square to the table. And I go ahead and turn this on to full speed. And I very carefully take a file. And I already know pretty much where I'm going to do this. And I set in. And look, if you can look and see, this is the wider end where the gear goes on behind the wheel. Okay? So when you take this out, this is the other end. Actually, this is where the gear goes on. This end is where the other wheel goes on, the non-driven end. And I'll be checking to see, I did this end here. Alright, you can see that this end is done. And the Northwest Shoreline non-insulated wheel goes right on. And I'm going to put a bit of Loctite on the wheel to hold it in place. Or even, put just a small toothpick drop of Loctite or epoxy. It'll hold it right place. And the gear, the original drive gear, which is right here, goes right behind it and gets mounted back in the truck. So we go ahead and we put this in here, we chuck it in place. Make sure everything's clear, and very carefully hold the file against the axle shaft, not too hard but a firm press, and take your first cut. I'm actually using this like a lathe to turn down the axle. So you'll see it's starting to turn down here, okay? And check my fitment to make sure it's the proper clearance of the wheel. And it's not. I have to take a slightly higher or deeper cut onto the shaft. So I start at a higher position. Once again, I hold it against it because I'm firing down material. And you can see now how the shaft lines up, how it looks now. Being I've turned it down some. Take the chuck key, aside, and you can see the axle shaft turned down a bit, but not enough to fit this insulated wheel yet. Got a little while to go yet. But I want to make sure the depth of cut is correct. I have to take a little bit of a deeper cut. The deeper cut on the axle itself, I have to take a little bit of a difference in height, about a couple of thousandths in difference. So I put this back into the chuck. By the way, this doesn't get all that hot either, so I'm not going to burn my hands or anything, and the file doesn't even get that hot. But you do, and I advise you do this after a while, is take a file card, which is a file cleaner, and you clean your file of the filings, because you don't want to get clogged up. Then you go back and you start again. And remember, a couple of thousand difference for a different higher cut. You work your way in. Technically, I should be using a lathe for this, so I should have made this horizontal and had a stationary cutter mounted in my vise, but I didn't want to do that. That just, for me, I just find it easier this way to do this. So, turn this down a little bit so it's not so conical on the outside, and go ahead and turn it down some more to the proper diameter. Go ahead. Yes, I'm going to check every once in a while to make sure everything is properly done. I mean, that's one of the things about it. It's like I could have marked off with blue dot, with machinist dye, you know, what size I wanted and how deep I wanted everything. I could do that. That would just take extra steps, but it would give me more accurate results. So I know I have to turn this down more instead of going back and forth like this. You just go ahead and press in, not too hard. You're pressing in firmly so that you're taking a cut. It's all by feel. And you don't have to use expensive files. These are pretty much steel files. You can get steel cutting files. You can get from any hardware store, Home Depot, you know, box stores, as they call them. Because if you press too firmly and too harsh, or too hard, you're going to go ahead and possibly break the end of the shaft that you don't want to do, which would then ruin it. MTH currently does not have anything as far as doing this goes, and it was like, you have to go ahead and send in the whole truck. And see, you can see another 1,000th or two, and I'll be able to put the wheel right on there. And so the speed, just a second or two, just a couple of seconds, you know, pressing in so that you know you're taking a little bit of a cut. And boom, I could take a little bit of a higher cut to account for the back piece on the insulator on the wheel. So that's what I'm going to do, take a little bit of a higher cut. Cut it a little bit higher, so to speak. And you can see the shoulder here. It's developing because I took the higher cut. You can see the shoulder. I got to square that off. And once that's squared off, then it gets checked again. Because it doesn't take all that long to do this. It really doesn't. I can do this all day with music. And you see, boom. And you can see that the axle shaft is even and flush with the end of the wheel. The gear on the other side gets pressed in using the arbor press over here, and then after it's punched through the truck. So now this axle is ready to go back into this truck here. So I can go ahead and press these in, and the only thing I have left to do now is to do the second axle. Once the second axle is done, then I go ahead and push it and use the press to go ahead and press the whole truck together, and then I can go ahead and mount it back to the motor. And I can use another motor, like this Northwest Shortline motor that was mounted on a power truck, that Dave Rigmeyer mounted from Northwest Shortline, albeit he used the wrong size wheels. These are supposed to be 33-inch wheels, these are 40-inch wheels, but this gives you an idea of the mount. These are the gears and everything, and he has to press, I got to press these in a bit further, and so that the gears engage better. Well, on this axle anyway, this one's just fine, but this motor gives you an idea how he mounted it. With the China drive motor from MTH is a lot larger than this, but this one's a new motor he has. So you see, this is part of my 3-rail MTH conversion to 2-rail for New York City subway cars. This is going up on YouTube, and I will provide a link for anybody to watch this. And the next segment is going to show the truck, the wheels pressed in, an axle pressed into the truck, so that you can see the whole assembly together, the truck assembly, before it gets mounted. The third segment is going to be where the truck is mounted back on the motor and the floor, and then you'll see wiring and testing. Hope this helps, and anybody, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to page me, text me, email me, or find me on Facebook. My name is Robert Andreoni. I'm a former New York City subway motorman. I drove subway trains in New York City for the better part of 17 years, and 18 years I was also a car cleaner. I've worked all over the system, including parts of the IRT. Spent 10 years driving miscellaneous diesel locomotives, and that's going to be another project I'll be doing once I'm done with these, is starting up to do a model of the diesel I used to operate. Anyway, hope this was informative, and hope you enjoyed the video. Have a good one.